In the silent, scorched heart of a world known only as Dead Terra, a planet whose very name is a synonym for catastrophic failure in 1,000 galactic archives, two explorers from a young, cautious starfaring species move through the dust of eons. They are not here for glory, they are contractors, paid to sift the atomic sand for scraps of forgotten technology. The galaxy believes this place holds only one lesson, the pinnacle of stupidity. A civilization that ate its own home. But, when their scanners ping deep within a crippled mountain, they uncover a vault not of weapons or power, but of sleepers. Preserved in perfect, impossible ice. The last children of Earth. As the first chamber hisses open after 800 millennia, the explorers make a fatal, beautiful mistake. They assume they are the discoverers. They are not. They are the discovered. Document 1. The wind on Dead Terra didn't howl, it sighed. A dry, weary exhalation carrying fine, irradiated dust across continents of glass and skeletal ruins. Kalen adjusted his environmental suit's filter, the readout blinking a persistent, dull orange. Not immediately lethal, but a long-term promise of decay. His partner, Ryla, swept a multispectral scanner across the face of a shattered obsidian plain that had once been a city. Another graveyard, her voice crackled in his helmet calm, laced with the static of heavy particle interference. Consistent with the records. Total biosphere collapse following a cascading energy weapon exchange. Primitive. Messy. Kalen grunted, his four-digit hands deftly calibrating a deep penetration sensor. The Protheman consensus paid us to find stable crystalline batteries or singularity containment alloys. Not to catalog ancient madness. Their species, the Velen, were newcomers to the interstellar community, meticulous and risk-averse. This contract was a stepping stone, a chance to earn credits and a reputation. Dead Terra was a universal cautionary tale, a species so violently arrogant it had turned its cradle into a tomb. It was considered archaeologically inert, all the valuable lessons already extracted, leaving only the bleak scenery. Ryla's scanner pinged, a sharp, clear tone cutting through the ambient noise. Deep structure. 30 spans down. Geometric. Non-natural. Her large, dark eyes widened behind her visor. The composition is strange. Not metal. Not stone. A complex polymer matrix layered with water. Massive amounts of frozen water. Ice. On a planet where the oceans had boiled away, finding a deliberate reservoir of water was like finding a lake of diamonds. It made no economic or logical sense. A flicker of something other than professional interest stirred in Kalen. This was an anomaly. It took 3 solar cycles to clear the rubble and bore through the adamantine crust to the structure. It was not a weapons cache or a palace. It was a smooth, teardrop-shaped chamber, hidden in a geological fold, its surface eerily unblemished by time. The door, once they found its seam, was not locked. It responded to a simple energy pulse, as if waiting. With a hiss that sent 800,000 years of dust swirling in the thin atmosphere, it slid open. The cold that rolled out was a physical blow, making their suit thermals shriek in protest. Inside, bathed in the soft blue glow of dormant phosphorescence, were rows of translucent capsules. And, within each capsule, suspended in a clear, gel-like ice, were figures. Ryla's breath hitched. Are they statues? Memorials? Kalen moved closer, his scanner trembling in his hand. The figures were bipedal, two-armed, with 5 digits on each limb. Their faces were peaceful in sleep, hair of various colors matted by the gel. They wore simple, uniform clothing. One, near the front, was smaller than the others, its features softer. A juvenile. They're biological, Kalen whispered, his analytical mind racing. Cryonic suspension. A stasis field of unimaginable stability. This isn't a tomb. It's an ark. An ark to nowhere, Ryla said, her voice hollow. The planet died. Why would they go to sleep here? It's a suicide pod. Unless, Kalen said, tracing the symbols etched on the capsule of the smaller sleeper, they didn't think it was the end. He activated his translation matrix, praying the linguistic banks had scraps of the dead planet's tongue. The glyphs resolved slowly, with gaps. Project Phoenix.
Subject: Ilara. Stasis duration: parametric. Trigger: planetary biosignature rebirth.
They were waiting, Kalen said, awe and dread coiling in his stomach.
Waiting for the world to heal. Ryla's professional detachment shattered. It's been 800,000 years. Nothing healed. The trigger failed.
She gestured wildly at the silent, frozen forms.
They're waiting for a sunrise that will never come. This is a monument to despair.
A decision hung in the frozen air. Protocol dictated they report the find, tag it for xenological study, and leave.
The Veln did not interfere. They observed. The juvenile's capsule, Ilara's capsule, had a status panel.
A single light, deep beneath layers of frost, pulsed with a faint, stubborn, red rhythm.
Life sign, minimal. Stable. It wasn't a memorial. It was a hospital ward.
Kalen met Ryla's gaze. He saw his own conflict mirrored there, cold logic versus a profound, unsettling pity. To leave was correct. To intervene was to tamper with a dead culture's last, failed wish. His hand moved before his mind could veto it. He directed a low-powered thermal calibrator at the capsule's primary systems node.
The trigger is dead. The world is dead. But they are not. Kalen. We can't.
The ethics, the contamination. Is it more ethical to let them sleep in a dead dream? He fired back, his voice tight.
We are not grave robbers. We are finders. With a series of chirps, the ancient systems, prodded by modern energy, began a cascading reactivation. The gel in Ilara's capsule started to clear, draining away.
The faint red light blinked, stuttered, and turned a steady, vibrant green. The capsule lid dissolved with a sound like breaking crystal. And the small human child took her first, gasping, shuddering breath in 800,000 years. Document 2. The sound was raw, a desperate, wet sucking of air that echoed in the sterile vault.
Ilara convulsed, her small body racked by coughs as ancient lungs remembered their purpose.
Her eyes, widened, a startling shade of brown flecked with green, flew open. They saw nothing but panic, rolling white, seeing past Kalen and Ryla to some internal terror.
Containment!
Ryla shouted, her training overriding her shock. She rushed forward with a medical stabilizer, a flexible pad meant to soothe nerve clusters.
She pressed it against the child's neck.
Ilara flailed, a weak, frantic motion, and her hand connected with Ryla's suit.
The Veln explorer froze.
Not from pain, but from sensation. The suit's exterior sensors relayed data, temperature, pressure, biometric leakage.
And something else. A psychic echo, a byproduct of the Veln's slightly telepathic biology.
It was a maelstrom of confusion, a deep, primal cold, and a singular, piercing thought image, a smiling face of a woman with the same green-flecked eyes, blurred by time but imprinted with love.
Mother.
Then, it was gone, replaced by sheer, animal fear.
She's harmless.
Terrified, Ryla reported, her own voice shaking. The emotional backwash was distressing.
Kalen worked quickly, administering a broad-spectrum nutrient boost via a dermal spray.
He then wrapped the shivering child in a thermal foil blanket. Ilara's struggles weakened, the combined shock of awakening, the nutrients, and the foreign environment overwhelming her. She curled into a ball, her eyes locked on the two alien figures looming over her in their sleek, armored suits.
She didn't scream.
She whimpered, a tiny, broken sound that was worse than any alarm. "We've made a terrible mistake," Ryla murmured, watching the child.
"Her systems are primitive. Her immune system will be non-existent.
She'll die from a common spore." "Then, we stabilize her," Kalen said, his mind racing ahead.
"Full decontamination, portable life support. We take her to the ship. And do what with her, Kalen? She is a being from a myth. A creature from the time of fire.
The consensus will quarantine her, dissect her to understand the old pathogens she carries."
"We won't tell the consensus." The silence that followed was thicker than the vault's cold. Ryla stared at her partner.
What he was suggesting was beyond unprofessional, it was a career-ending, potentially species-endangering crime.
Kalen gestured at the rows of other capsules, their occupants still locked in ice. We woke one. We are responsible. For her, and for them. We need to understand what this place is, why it's here. The answers might determine if we wake anymore, or if we let them rest. He turned back to Alara. Her breathing had evened, and the sheer terror in her eyes had softened into a dazed, wary exhaustion. She was staring at a symbol on Kalen's chest plate, the interlocking circles of the Veln Exploratory Guild. Slowly, with a trembling hand still clutching the foil blanket, she pointed at the symbol, then, at her own chest, and then, made a sweeping gesture that took in the entire chamber. Ryla's translator, still sluggishly processing the old language, produced a fragmented, synthesized guess. We, are, the circle? No, child, Kalen said softly, knowing she couldn't understand. You are the question. They set up a secure perimeter in the vault. While Ilara slept under sedation, they explored. They found a central data core, its physical form preserved but its power dead. Kalen jury-rigged a connection from their ship's auxiliary power. Glyphs and images flickered to life on a dusty, monolithic screen. It was not a military log. It was a message. A final record. A human face, aged and weary but calm, appeared. The translation matrix stuttered, then found a rhythm. If you are seeing this, the long night has passed. Either the world is green again, or others have come. I am Dr. Eris Thorne, last director of Project Phoenix. We were not the cause of the fire. We were its custodians. When the final missiles flew, we did not launch ships to the stars. We believed the stars would come to us, in time. So we chose the best of us, the most resilient, the kindest minds and the brightest hearts, and we put them to sleep. Not in bunkers of war, but in wombs of ice. The trigger was not a timer. It was a promise that when life took root again on Earth, you would wake to help it grow. The image shifted to show schematics, not of weapons, but of ecological terraforming systems, genetic libraries, cultural archives. This wasn't a last refuge. It was a gift. A seed vault for the soul of a species, meant for the planet's inheritors, whether they were human or otherwise. Ryla watched, her earlier dread transforming into a crushing weight of understanding. They weren't hiding. They were waiting to give this away. They thought someone would need it. Kalen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the vault. The galaxy's story of dead Terra was one of a warlike, suicidal ape. But this vault, this phoenix, spoke of a profound, tragic hope. A hope that had slept for eons, only to be woken not by a green world, but by two scavengers. He looked at Ilara, sleeping fitfully. She wasn't a relic. She was an heir. And she carried a legacy the galaxy had gotten catastrophically wrong. Document 3 aboard the Veln survey ship Zenith's Gleam, in a hastily sterilized storage bay converted into a quarantine room, Ilara began to remember. Not in words, but in sensations. The sterile smell of the ship was wrong. It lacked the ozone and soil scent of the vault's imagined atmosphere. The constant, subaudible hum of the engines was a vibration in her bones, a replacement for a heartbeat she couldn't place. Kalen and Ryla, now out of their intimidating suits, appeared to her as slender, gray-skinned beings with large, liquid black eyes and gentle, long-fingered hands. They were aliens, but their movements were careful, their voices soft. They brought her food, nutrient pastes they synthesized. She ate reluctantly, her body craving sustenance her mind couldn't recognize. Communication was a puzzle of gestures and the ship's struggling translator. She pointed to water. She pointed to images of the sky on their screens. One day, she drew in the condensation on the viewport. She drew two large figures and a small one holding hands. Then, she drew a multitude of other small figures, still in their capsules, behind them. The question was clear. We cannot wake them yet, little one, Kalen said, the translator converting his words into the rasping, melodic sounds of her ancient tongue. Their world is still dead. It would be a curse, not a gift. Ilara's face fell. She understood enough. The sorrow in her eyes was ancient. Ryla, meanwhile, worked on the vault's data core. The more she deciphered, the more the myth of humanity unraveled.
she found records of the time of fire. It was not one war, but a brief, insane paroxysm at the very end of a long age of peace. Project Phoenix was the work of the faction that had opposed the final strike, the ones who had lost. They were the custodians Dr. Thorne spoke of, not warriors, but gardeners, archivists, and dreamers. She also found the technical specs for the vault's stability. The answer to how was breathtakingly simple and ingenious. It was powered by geothermal taps and shielded by a quantum-lock stasis field that required minimal energy to maintain. But one line of code, buried deep, made her blood run cold. Contingency, Soul Link Protocol. In event of primary biosignature trigger failure, stasis integrity is psychically anchored to a designated prime. The emotional and psychological well-being of the prime directly impacts field stability. Prime, subject Ilara. Kalen, Ryla called him to her terminal, her voice thin. The vault, it's not just a machine. It's linked to her. Her life sign, her emotional state. It's a feedback loop. She woke up because we interfered, but the others, their sleep is tied to her subconscious. What are you saying? I'm saying if she is traumatized, despairing, if she dies, the field could destabilize. It could kill them all, or worse, partially wake them into a nightmare. Ryla rubbed her temples. They didn't just make her a sleeper. They made her a guardian. A child, given the key to her entire species' survival. The weight of their actions threatened to crush them. They hadn't just rescued a child, they had accidentally made her the linchpin for 49 other lives. Every tear she shed, every moment of fear, wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a systems risk. Back in the quarantine room, Ilara was having a breakthrough. She had found a discarded data slate. Mimicking Ryla, she tapped at it. The ship's AI, recognizing her biometrics as a guest, granted limited access. It showed her images. Stars. Planets. And, then, a historical file tagged Dead Terra, Postfire. She saw the scorched globe. She saw the galactic database entry, a dry, academic summary, *, a textbook example of Class 12 planetary sociocide. Pre-fire species, Homo sapiens, designation, human. Characteristics, aggressive, territorial, expansionist. Cause of extinction, autogenic conflict. Ilara stared. She didn't understand all the words, but the tone was clear. Disdain. Condemnation. A final, galactic verdict. Then, she found a picture. A reconstruction of a pre-fire human city, based on orbital scans. It was all sharp angles and gray metal. It looked nothing like the vibrant, green cities in the Phoenix records. This was the galaxy's memory of her people, a cold, warlike monument. A sound escaped her, a quiet, devastated keen. Kalen heard it and rushed in. He saw the slate, saw the image. He knelt before her. That is not the truth, he said, struggling for the words. We did not know. The galaxy did not know. Ilara looked at him, her eyes filled with a pain far too old for her face. She pointed to the cruel, angular reconstruction, then, to her own heart. She shook her head violently. No. Then, she tapped the slate until she found a file she had somehow saved from the vault, an image of a human child laughing, holding a flower in a sun-drenched field. She pointed to that, and, then, to her heart again. Yes. In that moment, Kalen understood the true mission. It wasn't just to keep Ilara alive. It was to keep her hope alive. Because her hope was the lock on the vault, and the key to a truth that could shatter a galaxy's lie. Document for the Zenith Spleen became a tiny, fragile world of 3. Kalen became the pragmatist, teaching Ilara about the ship, about the Veln, about the modern galaxy, its many species, its technologies, its dangers. He showed her how to operate basic systems, giving her a sense of control in a universe where she had none. Ryla became the archivist and the empath. She shared the true records from the vault, the art, the music, the stories of humanity that had nothing to do with war. She played a symphony for Ilara, composed of instruments lost to time. The child listened, tears streaming down her face, not in sadness, but in recognition. She hummed a fragment of the melody back, a lullaby from the edge of oblivion. Ilara, in turn, taught them about humanity in the only way she could, through feeling. The Veln's mild telepathy meant they were sensitive to her strong, untrained emotional broadcasts. When she was happy, focused on a puzzle or drawing, a warmth filled the room, a sense of resilient curiosity. When the nightmares came, visions of fire and silence, a cold dread seeped into the very bulkheads. They learned to calm her, not just for her sake, but for the 49 souls in the ice whose stability depended on her psychic anchor. They knew they couldn't hide forever. Their survey contract had a timeline. A Veln oversight drone would eventually come looking for them. They needed a plan, and the only one that made sense was as terrifying as it was obvious. They had to challenge the galaxy's history. Ryla began compiling a data packet, a Phoenix file. It contained Dr. Thorne's message, the cultural archives, the ecological data, and proof of the vault's non-military purpose. The crown jewel was a simple recording, Ilara, looking at the galaxy's hateful reconstruction of her world, saying in her halting, recovered voice, "This is a story about the end. My story is about the beginning." But to send it was to invite scrutiny, and scrutiny would lead the authorities, Veln and others, right to dead Terra. They couldn't risk the vault being seized as a bioweapon cache or a xenocontaminant site. "We have to move them," Kalen concluded one night, staring at a star chart. "We need to find a safe haven, a world where they can be woken properly. A world that needs the gifts Phoenix holds." Finding such a world was nearly impossible. Garden worlds were rare and fiercely protected. Frontier planets were lawless. Then, Ryla found a record in the newsfeeds. A fringe, multi-species scholarly group called the Custodians of Legacy was petitioning the galactic consensus. Their world, a marginal but recovering planet named Sylvan, was suffering an ecological collapse. Their plea was for ancient terraforming knowledge, any records from species who had mastered their biospheres. It was a perfect, desperate match. Sylvan needed what Phoenix had to give. But approaching them was a risk. They could be idealists, or they could be exploiters. While Kalen plotted a cautious course to the Sylvan system, the past caught up with them. An automated ping from the Veln Exploratory Guild flashed on the console. Survey ship Zenith's Gleam. Your mission duration has expired. Report status and location for debriefing. Acknowledge. They had run out of time. A tense silence filled the bridge. If they ignored it, a search would be launched. If they lied, their story would be picked apart. It was Ilara who moved. She had been watching, learning. She understood the threat represented by the blinking message. She walked to Ryla's console, her small hand hovering over the comms panel. She looked at Ryla, a question in her eyes. "She wants to speak to them," Ryla translated, feeling the child's intent, a mix of fear and a fierce, protective resolve. "No. It's too dangerous," Kalen said. But Ilara was already pressing buttons, mimicking the command sequences she'd seen. She opened a one-way audio channel. She leaned close to the mic and, in her clear, child's voice, spoke the first words a human had spoken to the galaxy in 800,000 years. "Hello," she said in the Veln tongue, the word awkward but understandable. "My name is Ilara. I am from Earth. Please, do not be afraid of us." She closed the channel before any reply could come. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. On the bridge, alarms shrieked. The source of the transmission was a scandal, but the content was an impossibility. The Veln authorities would now be descending with every assumption of a hoax, a hijacking, or a horrific breach of quarantine. Kalen slammed his hand on the navigation console. "We jump. Now. To Sylvan. It's our only chance." As the Zenith's Gleam spun up its faster-than-light drive, Kalen looked at Ilara. She stood straight, her small fists clenched, facing the viewscreen as stars stretched into lines. She wasn't a scared child anymore. She was a messenger, and she had just delivered her message. The consequences were now hurtling toward them, faster than light. Document 5. The world of Sylvan hung in the viewport like a bruised emerald, its continents patched with sickly gray and brown, the scars of a failing biosphere. The zenith's gleam dropped out of FTL at the system's edge, its transponder broadcasting a desperate, encrypted plea to the custodians of legacy on a frequency Ryla had unearthed. The reply was swift and wary. Unidentified Veln vessel. Your encryption is ancient. Your story is impossible. Hold position. A ship will meet you. They didn't have time to hold. Long-range sensors detected two new signatures emerging from FTL behind them, sleek, official Veln enforcer cutters. The guild had tracked them. They're hailing us, Ryla said, her voice tight. Kalen's face was set in grim lines. Ignore them. Take us into Sylvan's atmosphere. Now. The custodians will either save us or shoot us down. Either is better than a Veln quarantine cell. The zenith's gleam shuddered as it hit the upper atmosphere, heat shields glowing. The Veln cutters, bound by stricter protocols, held at the exosphere, firing warning pulses of energy that lit up the sky. On the surface, a settlement of domes and organic spires came into view. A single, blocky freighter rose to meet them, its weapons unpowered, a tentative sign of peace. A voice, synthesized and calm, came over the calm Veln ship. We are the custodians. Your data packet has been received. We have questions. Land at the coordinates provided. Your pursuers are a problem we share a dislike for. They set down in a dusty field outside the main dome. As the landing gears settled, the airlock cycled open. The air that rushed in was thin, smelling of decay and, desperate, recycled oxygen. Waiting for them was a small delegation, a tall, insectoid seraph with iridescent wings folded tight, a stout, moss-covered drone, and a humanoid sylvanite whose skin bore the faint pattern of bark. Their eyes, multiple and varied, widened at the sight of Kalen and Ryla. But they froze completely when Ilara, holding Kalen's hand, stepped into the light of Sylvan's dim sun. The lead custodian, the sylvanite, knelt. Its voice was a rasp of wind through leaves. The image in the data file, it is true. A child of the before time. Before anyone could speak, the sky darkened. The Veln cutters, defying diplomatic norms, had entered the atmosphere. Their amplified voices boomed down. By order of the Veln Exploratory Guild and the Galactic Health Consensus, you are to surrender the biological artifacts and the rogue operatives immediately. This world has no jurisdiction here. A standoff crackled in the thin air. The custodians looked from the authoritative cutters to the fragile, ancient child. They had only a fantastical story and a data packet as proof. Ilara let go of Kalen's hand. She walked forward, towards the lead custodian, and, past him, towards the open field where the Veln ships were descending. She felt the fear in Kalen and Ryla, the desperation of the Sylvanites, the cold authority from above. And she felt the deep, sleeping hum of the vault in her mind, a song of 49 hearts beating in time with her own. She stopped and looked up at the descending ships. Then, she did something she remembered from the vault's records. She raised her hands, palms open and empty. A universal, ancient gesture of peace and of offering. She didn't speak to the Veln. She spoke to the custodians, her voice carried by their own open comms, so all could hear. She used the words Ryla had helped her piece together. You are sick, she said, gesturing at the dying world. My people, before the end, learn to heal. We made a library for life. For music. For growing things. She pointed a small finger at the data slate in the lead custodian's hand. That is the key. I am the messenger. Do not be afraid of the gift. The lead custodian looked from Ilara's earnest, dust-streaked face to the imposing Veln enforcers. He made a decision. He raised his own communicator. Veln vessels. This is a sovereign world of the Sylvan Compact. You have entered our space without consent. The being you seek is under our protection as a cultural exchange envoy. The data she carries is offered to us freely. You have no claim. One of the Veln cutters powered a tactical beam. The being is a biohazard. The data is stolen property. Stand aside. It was then that Ryla acted. She opened a wideband broadcast, transmitting the core of the Phoenix file, Dr. Thorne's message, the images of the vault's purpose on every frequency, including the public galactic bans. It was a spill of truth, raw and undeniable, into a galaxy fed on lies. On the cutter's bridge, the officers would be seeing it. Across Sylvan, people would be seeing it. Across nearby systems, curious minds would be receiving it. The lead custodian stepped forward, placing his body between Ilara and the ships. "You speak of contamination," he boomed, his voice suddenly strong. "Yet you bring only threats. She brings us seeds. Which is the greater poison?" A tense silence stretched. Then, a new signal chimed, a high-priority, multi-species channel. It was the office of the Galactic Archivist, a neutral, revered body. "All parties, stand down. The transmitted data has been verified as authentic and unprecedented. The being known as Ilara, and the associated Phoenix Archive, are hereby granted provisional protected status under the Covenant of Lost Legacies. A full council will be convened. Veln enforcers, you are ordered to withdraw and await further instructions." The energy beam from the cutter flickered and died. The ships hovered, then, with obvious reluctance, began to rise back towards orbit. They had been outmaneuvered by history itself. Ilara didn't cheer. She swayed on her feet, the immense strain of the last weeks crashing down. Kalen rushed to catch her as her knees buckled. She looked up at him, then, at the Sylvanite custodian. "The others," she whispered. "In the ice. They can help you. They want to." The custodian nodded, his woody face etched with a profound, new hope. "We will send a ship with you. We will bring your people home. Not to a dead world, but to one that needs them." As the Sylvan sun set, casting long shadows, Kalen held the sleeping child. Ryla stood beside him, watching the first, curious Sylvanite children peeking from the dome, their eyes on Ilara with wonder, not fear. They had come to dead Terra as scavengers, looking for scrap in a graveyard. They had found a heartbeat in the dark. And, in waking one small girl, they had not just discovered humanity. They had given it, and a dying world, a second chance to begin again. The story of dead Terra was over. The story of the Phoenix was just taking flight.